We've just heard a piece entitled Because It's There. That's taken from the soundtrack to an album called The Shape of the Land, a work that features a number of artists, including William Ackerman and Philip Auberg. But that piece was a solo performance by our guest in the studio tonight on this edition of New Sounds, guitarist and composer Michael Hedges. And Michael, it's good to have you here in the studio.
Well, thank you. I went up to the 14th floor first and talked to your executives, and they told me to come up here to the top. And these are beautiful new studios you got here.
Yeah. Well, you should have seen the old place. I mean, we've completely skipped... What have we skipped? We've skipped the transistor age. We've gone from tubes and wires to digital. So it's like a half a century that we've somehow eluded here. But anyway, speaking of technology and things that are different, this guitar that we just heard was not really a classical or conventional guitar.
No, of course, I don't know exactly all the history behind guitars, but the classical guitar, of course, is nylon or gut strings, and I play pretty much exclusively on steel strings. One reason why I do that is because the steel strings are more adaptable to changes in tension, and I use different tunings for each piece that I compose and make on the guitar. And I liked that so much, and I kept wanting new pitches to appear. Even though I was in a tuning that I liked, I wanted to hear some other nice big round open string. And then I saw this sort of mutated guitar in a shop in San Francisco, and it's called a harp-guitar, and that's what we were listening to.
Now, this has about 7 or 8 large strings.
Yeah, the bass, the theme that you hear that pretty much goes through the whole deal, da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun-dun, is all done on the harp part of the instrument, which is 5 strings in this case.
Mm-hmm. Now, you play both the harp part of the guitar and the guitar, quote-unquote, part of the guitar at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mostly do just tapping with my left hand on the strings of the guitar, and then use my right hand to pluck the strings of the harp. And then I, switch around so it doesn't sound too tapped or too plucked. And that's what kind of makes my style a little bit different than some others, is that I try to integrate both the techniques so they don't sound like techniques, just so it sounds coherent as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Now, there have been other guitarists who've worked with this so-called keyboard technique where you use both hands on the neck. Yeah. When did this start? I mean, you've been doing this for years now.
Yeah, I started doing it, I guess in 72 or so, when I first started writing. One of my first tunes was called Silent Anticipations, and probably I got it from Leo Kottke, the main idea from that, and I kind of tried to develop that. Then I started just experimenting off my own, but I really didn't have too many influences. The main reason why I started doing it was because I wanted to hear things that I couldn't pull off in regular guitar technique. And when I heard it in my head, necessity is the mother of invention. So I tried to get those sounds out, and the technique sort of evolved from the music. And I had never really been too much in contact with other guitar players, but living in Palo Alto and playing there, I did see Stanley Jordan a couple of years ago before he was ever known, and he just, my jaw just sort of dropped open to what he was doing. And to me, the style is somewhat limited because every attack is the result of a tap. I think it works real well for Stanley, and especially in a band format, but I like to strum the thing hard and then go tap something. So it's a whole different technique, really, because the action is so different. It's almost like the difference between a harpsichord and a piano.
Yeah. Well, you have so many. I mean, the first time I saw you, I have to tell you, I was amazed and a little horrified because as a classical guitarist, you're taught never does the thumb come up over the fingerboard onto the strings. And here's this guy up on stage, and you're making chords with that thumb. And 3 strings.
I guess I learned that from Richie Havens. Richie Havens got the biggest thumb around, all the way around. But the reason why, and I studied classical guitar at the Peabody down in Baltimore for 4 years. Not as a major. The first 2 years were a major, and then I decided I wanted to be a composition major, and my guitar teacher thought it would be best too. but we got along pretty well, and the main reason why is because the classical guitar neck is so much thicker that if you do put your thumb around the back of the neck, then it kind of impedes the progress of your other fingers on the other side of the neck. But on my guitar, it's much thinner, and you can sort of get around a little bit easier.
Okay, now you're going to do a couple of pieces for us live in the studio here. The first one you've already mentioned is Silent Anticipations.
Right.
Now, you said this is your first composition or something, an old work.
Yeah, it's an old one, but it sort of, I can breathe life into it because it's one of those tunes that I was trying to not really compose a melody as such, but just to get concentrate on the other elements of harmony and of rhythm, so I tend to be able to improvise a little bit as I play it, so it turns out a little bit different every time.
Okay. This is a live performance. We have just heard anybody attack an instrument. I mean, it's almost.
And you know, with the helicopter-like guitar chords, I never really got into that. But I did used to wear a jumpsuit to my band performances when I was in junior high or in high school. I used to try to be Pete Townsend. We played Pinball Wizard and all that stuff.
All the old Who tunes from the 60s. And
yeah, and I always didn't really want to be sort of pegged as a folkie either.
Yeah.
And so I tend to attack a little bit in my shows the instrument, because I do have some rock and roll roots, and I will be forming a rock band. I already have it formed, but we haven't recorded too much yet.
You going to switch to an electric, or are you going to stick with the acoustic?
No, I'll stick with acoustic, but I'll also play some electric. I don't really think that I have the time or concentration to become the electric guitar player that I would want to be as a main activity, or else I would go crazy, you know, trying to be like Alan Holdsworth.
Mm. Well, now, when you're playing a guitar with the intensity that you just did, does the instrument tend to slip out of tune a lot? Or?
No, that's why I really like to play steel string, because for some reason it holds the tuning a lot better.
Now you basically can take this. I mean, this was a fairly easy setup tonight, and it seems like something that wouldn't be too much trouble to take out on the road.
Oh, no. I take my own, I travel solo or, with one person.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's very easy to take me out and do a whole solo tour, just renting a PA. I have my own pickups on the guitar and everything I need except the amplifier and speaker. And it's sort of I was talking about earlier how the music dictated the techniques. Well, the music also dictates the tunings, and certain strings had to be open for me to pull off other things.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of wrestle with it for a while you're composing, with the tuning, that is. And then maybe the tuning gets, into one form, and you can do all this and this, but you can't do all those other things. So you try to change the tuning so you can get the multitude of things to do that you want to do. And that's a little bit tough because your ideas will be changing and everything's kind of interactive with everything else. So there's no specific way that I would arrive at a tuning, but
it's just the way to get the most out of what you're doing.
Sure.
Okay. And this piece also has a little bit of a different sound, I would say, from Silent
It's much more
Anticipation.
static, yeah. And I was, of course, influenced by Steve Reich on this one. It's very minimal compared to Silent Anticipations, but it's a little bit more melodic than Silent Anticipations. It has a sort of a theme to it that you can hum, and it has a rhythmic theme. I tried to vary themes and sort of build a surface with different short figures and then embellish them and then take them out and bring them back in.
Okay. All right, let's hear another live performance tonight in our studios by Michael Hedges. This piece is entitled Aerial Boundaries. We've just heard Aerial Boundaries performed live in our studios. My guest this evening is Michael Hedges. On tonight's edition of New Sounds, Aerial Boundaries is the name of your second Windham Hill release.
Right.
It's been surprising to me to talk to you tonight and hear you mentioning people like Steve Reich and Leo Kottke and Pete Townsend and Richie Havens all in
one breath.
Basically in one sitting. And then to find out that obviously your musical interests don't stop there, because on Aerial Boundaries you recorded a piece of basically musique concrète, or electronic music.
I also recorded a piece of Neil Young.
Mm-hmm. Which is, that's the piece with Michael Manring on it.
Right.
That's really a beautiful version.
Well, to me, music is certainly transcendent of, musical spirit is transcendent of style, and so I listen to everything I can, from Irish music to 20th century atonal music. The tune you speak of, Spare Change, was realized down at the electronic music studio at the Peabody down in Baltimore one Christmas holiday season when the conservatory was out, and I was friends with the director of the studio, so he just let me in there, and I slept in there essentially and composed all day and got it all done in about 7 days. It took me 110 hours or so to do all the edits. Many of the guitar sounds you'll hear are backward, many are slowed down, and lots of them are spliced together.
Now, what did you originally play? Were you just playing random notes and chords? Or?
No, I had the whole tune already composed. In fact, I had already recorded it live with Liz Story and Mike Manring on the Windham Hill Live album. But I wanted to do it on my record, too. You know, I felt like, well, I got something else to say with this tune, but I don't want to do the same instrumentation, at least not the same musicians. So I had some rehearsals, in fact, with Art Landy, the pianist, and he ended up, even though not hearing Liz's story, he ended up playing pretty much what Liz had played. So I thought, oh, what am I going to do now? Well, I'll treat it, make an electronic treatment of that, and say it that way, and that way I could also expand my textures on that record, and I think it really is one of my favorites.
All right, before we hear that, though, I want to thank you for dropping by tonight. I mean, this has been not only an eye-opener, but a real ear-opener for me, and I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, and I hope you drop by again next time you're in town.
Well, thanks for having me on New Sounds, and I'll come back and write some more.
Yeah, please do. Michael Hedges, and let's now hear Spare Change from the compact disc Aerial Boundaries.